Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to never miss a video from us.
Hello and welcome to the Expert Interview Series, and today we have the honor of hosting a distinguished guest whose expertise in software excellence has transformed the landscape for startups and smaller companies. Joining us is the dynamic Katja Obring, the visionary founder and director of Kato Coaching Limited and the 15-minute Quality Catalyst. Katja, we are thrilled to have you today. Hope our viewers learn from your experiences.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Right. So, what I would like to first start to know more about your journey and what inspired you to focus on the quality in software delivery.
Yeah, so I think like many testers, I kind of accidentally stumbled into the role of tester a little bit. I was working in customer support. I started my career journey as a chef, so I used to cook a lot, and then I changed roles into software development, and I started in it was a mix of community support and customer support role, really. And at that time, we realized that I have a very good eye for things that don't work really well and a fairly low tolerance for things that don't work very well. So I'm always keen on fixing problems, spotting problems and helping, in fixing them. So I changed over to a test role and I did that for a while. And as you do, then I learned a little bit more about coding. I veered a little bit more into writing some automated test cases. I worked as a test consultant. I then worked as a test architect, and eventually I started working as head of delivery, because at that point I think I realized that a lot of quality issues are not necessarily down to bad testing, right? There are many, many ways in which you can improve quality. Testing is an important one, but there are many other ways. So that's kind of why I broadened my view on that a little bit. That's it in a nutshell.
Wow. So how was the transition? Was it difficult to learn from being a chef to customer support and then testing?
A little bit. I mean, there are things that are very similar and things that are very different, right? As a chef, you also have always making your customers happy is always, at the heart of what you do, obviously, and you get very immediate feedback, which is very similar to what you experience in customer support. However, customer support is a little bit different because people usually contact customer support when they already have a problem.
Right.
So you have a different way of interacting with people. And funny enough, there is one aspect of being a chef that I really still miss. And this is, if you're working in a professional kitchen, you make most of your money during a very short period of time that can be extremely stressful.
Right.
But also, if you have a good team, it can be really, really exhilarating. If you work with a great team, everybody is exactly where they need to be and do exactly what they need to do. It is a great experience. It's like a great team sport, right? And sometimes I miss that kind of team experience under stress. You have that in software development a little bit when something goes wrong in production, but that is obviously not a desirable state to be. So
how simple is it for you to manage teams while you are, performing your, you're delivering a software or you're testing?
I don't as such generally manage teams. I have managed teams before, and I tend to be I like to be a manager that is fairly hands-off. I don't like micromanagement. I don't really like telling people what to do. I like helping people figuring out what they should be doing, right? I like to help them ask the right questions, and by asking the right questions, then determine what the next steps should be. I think that is a better way of management than, telling people, do this. Why? Well, because I tell you so, right? Nobody likes that.
Your approach as the 15-minute quality catalyst is very intriguing. Can you help our viewers understand more about it?
Yeah, so this was born out of really many conversations I had around. A lot of people think that to improve quality in their organization or in their teams, it's this massive task, right? You need to invest years, and much work needs to go into this. And I firmly believe that you can improve quality by taking many small steps, like everything in your life, right? You want to get fitter. Don't set massive goals. Just start with a 15-minute walk every day. Do something small and achievable. And this is kind of what I'm trying to do with a 15-minute quality catalyst. But generally speaking, it is an action that doesn't take more than 15 minutes, but it will have a positive impact on your team and your quality.
Right. So small steps, take small steps, that is going to make you achieve the goals.
Exactly. Yeah, so I learned this from a book, which I highly recommend, by the way. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he talks about this quite a lot and in some great scientific detail of why this approach really works. Right. So.
Wow. Thanks so much for the input. So, in your work with the startup and smaller companies, you emphasize tailoring quality strategies. How do you go about understanding the unique need of a team?
Yeah, so just a little bit of background. So I talk about this a lot because I have found that often people and organizations have this idea that quality, is this kind of defined thing. Quality is, I don't know, you have only 5 serious incidents per year and you have an uptime of 99.9% and these things, right? When in fact quality is very, very individual to your organization. And you really need to understand first what quality means to you. Because obviously, for example, the error tolerance in a medical software that say, runs a pacemaker, the error tolerance in a software like that is very different from the error tolerance you have in a casual gaming application. Right? And the way I go about this is usually I start by collecting some information, right? Look at your metrics. Look at what is happening really. How long does it take you to put a change into production? How long does it take you to fix a bug? How many bugs in production do you have, right? Look at all of these things, right? How is the situation of your testing? Do you have automated tests? If you have automated tests, what is your test coverage? Do they actually catch bugs? Is it stable? Do your test run red or green? And if a test fails, can you be confident that it failed because there is something going wrong? Or do your tests fail for random reasons? Right? All of this. So collect a lot of information. And then when you have this information, I like to bring together a team of stakeholders. And stakeholders in this particular case means everybody who is interested or impacted by quality, which obviously is everybody in the company. You cannot always bring everybody in the company, but you want to have a good representation of different departments at least, right? So have somebody there from design, have somebody there from engineering, have somebody there from, if you have a QA department, obviously, right? Product. All of these people need to come together in a room and talk about what quality actually means to them.
Okay. So right. To understand from everybody's perspective.
Exactly. So this is normally run as a workshop where we basically do something that's akin to a lean coffee. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of lean coffee. So basically everybody just writes on Post-it notes what they think quality means. Okay. As many as you want, and then we do a little bit of dot voting, and then we rank them, and that way we get a good idea of what quality really means to everybody.
Right.
And then you start thinking about, okay, what steps can we take to achieve this goal? What needs to happen? How can we make this a reality? Mm-hmm. So then you start jotting down the steps, and this is often something that happens in many departments, right? This is not just, I don't know, testers need to test faster. Developers need to develop faster. Right. There is often an element of how does design work with development, right? How long does it take from a thing to go from here to here? How long does it take to get approval, for example? Is there an approval process? Do we need this approval process? Can we have, can we streamline these things?
Right. So could you share insights into how teams can find this equilibrium, especially in fast-paced development environments?
This is exactly why I like to take the approach I've just described, right? Because that way you know where your focus needs to be. You know whether you are looking into improving your test coverage, or maybe you're just looking into improving your monitoring. However, so that said, at the end of the day, I think quality assurance / testing is about risk management.
Right.
Right? That's what we're trying to achieve. And this is why it is really important, in my opinion, that every company has a good idea of what level of risk is tolerable to them. Again, this may be very different depending on what kind of company you are, what kind of software you produce. Again, right, somebody being a little bit annoyed because they can't harvest their potatoes in their online farming application is, of course, something you don't want to happen, right? But it is very different from, say, a heart monitor giving you wrong information and somebody potentially dying as a result of that.
Right.
Right. And I think this is really where you need to take this kind of a more holistic approach to the whole thing.
So based on the industry, based on the requirement, you need to see upside down the requirements and then set up the goals.
Exactly. So I think risk-based testing is really where it's at. If you talk about just testing, but for the entire quality process, the same thing is true. You need to know how much risk you are willing to take with your delivery and how to mitigate that.
Right. So, what motivated you to establish your own venture, and how has your role evolved in working directly with startups and smaller companies?
Well, so before I had my last role as a full-time employee, which was as head of delivery in a small startup, so I really like working with startups, and I really liked working as a consultant, because as a consultant, you often are brought in to solve problems that are really hard to solve.
Okay.
Not necessarily because the organizations don't have the knowledge or their people are not smart enough to solve them, but it is often consultants have a very quite specialized knowledge, but also I think for a lot of organizational malfunctions, it is much easier to see them if you're not involved in them day to day, which makes it easier to help people find solutions that work for them. And I really like that. I like solving hard problems, and I also really like solving a problem, seeing a client succeed, and then going on to another problem, right? So, and that basically is it in a nutshell.
Yes. So, are you still freelancing? I mean, you're giving support to startups?
I am. I mean, I don't necessarily only work with startups,
Okay.
right? So my preference is to come in early and help people build a good system rather than fix problems, but I'm also a fixer, so that is fine. And I do. And I'm currently working on adding more workshops that can be booked just as workshops into my rotation. So one thing, for example, I am asked fairly regularly, and I'm currently developing a training for, is how to help developers write better tests, right? Quite often you have a situation where developers write the first tests, and as it should be, I think automated tests should be written at time of implementation, right? So the further away from implementation you go, the harder it becomes to test things, partially because writing code, if you write code in a way that is testable, it just makes things a lot easier. And the easiest way to do that is by thinking about the testing while you're writing the code, right? And how do you think about testing while writing the code? Well, you write the tests, So that is one thing. However, I also think that in quality assurance and in testing, we talk a lot about the tester's mindset.
Right.
Which I think it's a great thing. I think it has evolved a little bit from what it used to be when I started. Right? So when I started, the tester's mindset generally had these three pillars of: you need to be able to think critically, you need to have a great eye for detail,
Right.
and you need to be kind of unafraid to call out things. And those are great, really great things, and they are great traits to have as a tester, but I think these days you really need to also have other traits, and you need to be a little bit more aware of how code works, and you need to understand systems thinking, right? You need to understand how to really analyze a process and a problem. And these are things I think can be taught. I don't think that these are just, magic abilities that you are born with.
Right. You
I
need
think
to
you can
learn.
train people, right? And that's kind of what I'm currently looking at, because the question comes up so often: how do we help developers write better tests? Well, we train them. We
Right.
train them to think like testers.
So, since you've been working into the testing domain, and we see that you are running Kato Coaching Limited as well, so you provide training for testers?
I do. Well, I do. I say I have a couple of training courses in the pipeline. None of them has been published yet. However, if anybody's interested, by all means, write up to my newsletter.
Since you've been working with a lot of testers and you take up their problems, so what change of mindset have you seen over the years?
Like I said, so when I started, there was this idea that testers test best the less they know about the application.
Okay.
That has definitely changed. I think these days, if you want to succeed as tester, you need to understand software architecture.
Right.
You don't need to become the best developer in the world. You don't need to be able to write the most beautiful code in the world, right? But you should at least be able to understand code and to read code, and maybe help out with code reviews, or at least pair with the developers and discuss, what kind of automated tests you want to write. I think that has really changed. I think anybody who doesn't want anything to do with code these days will find it very hard to succeed as tester. The other thing I think that has changed a little bit is that testers, in the whole shift left movement, testers are now often more relied upon to spot problems in the process rather than in the product.
Okay.
And by that I mean, testers can add great value to their teams by learning about CI/CD, how to set up a pipeline, how to streamline a pipeline, right? How to make adjustments to your continuous delivery pipeline, how to decide what tests are valuable to be run on every code commit, and whether there are maybe other tests that are okay to be run, maybe less frequently.
Now, as we see, you've been actively involved in implementing continuous integration and test automation. How do these practices contribute to improved software quality and delivery?
Yeah, I touched upon this already a little bit in my previous answer.
Right.
Right. So what is really important for that is a fast feedback loop. Right. So this is why I say automated tests are most valuable if they run at the point of commit.
Right.
But also because I am not a super patient person, and don't think anybody should wait more than 15 minutes for the results of their test. You need to keep it quick, right?
Right.
So any automated test suite that runs for hours and hours and hours is missing the point.
Okay.
Right? So really, like I said, 15 minutes, that is kind of for me the pain point where I kind of cut off. So that is one thing. Like I said already, a good, well set up pipeline is something where testers can add great value. And I think another thing that is often overlooked is, we talked about the tester's mindset already.
Right.
And often it is used to say, well, testers with their tester's mindset, look at the application in different ways, and then they provide information to the rest of the team. And I really like that idea. I don't think this information should be gathered once something is done and already delivered necessarily always, but there is one point where it's really useful, and that is monitoring. Right? If testers learn how to set up monitoring for their systems and decide, or help the team decide, what information you want and what information you need, because monitoring is something where people tend to often go a little bit overboard, because it's easy to monitor everything, and then you get all of the signals, right? And suddenly you're drowning in a sea of noise, but you can't really see the signal anymore because of all the noise. So I think testers are in a great position to say, well, let's start with, we know that this thing here is a little bit problematic. Maybe I don't know, maybe 1 in 10 logins fails for unknown reason, right?
Right.
So then you maybe want to think about a way how you can get some system monitoring in there that gives you feedback, so you know, immediately when this error occurs, you have a dashboard somewhere that error, you can see that,
Right.
but also what else is happening in the system at the same time, right? And then that can help you to really narrow down what is happening and why things are going wrong, because now you have information that hangs together, right? So I think that is a thing where testers can be really incredibly useful in this kind of setup.
Right. And of course, this kind of monitoring will help improve the software delivery as well.
Exactly.
So as we see that, there are a lot of inspiring individuals who want to specialize in quality practices within the software development area. What advice or key principles would you offer to help them navigate their career paths?
Like I say, so there are, don't just be somebody who relies on their critical mind, right? Learn some hard skills, and there is a lot to pick from. I understand that not everybody gets excited by the idea of writing code. Maybe that is not your thing, right? But then maybe learn something about design thinking, right? And specialize a little bit more. Maybe learn more about accessibility and help your team improve that. That is a topic that is really hot right now, right? And rightly so, because we all should be concerned with making our applications accessible to everybody, right? So that is just a good thing to do, but not everybody has the specialized knowledge you need
Correct.
to help your team achieve that. So I think, yes, just learn, pick something that really excites you in this area, right? And learn everything there is to learn about it.
So as we conclude, I would like to know, what trends do you foresee in software quality, and how should teams or people who are working in the field change and make amendments accordingly?
Well, so I think there is a little bit of a sad, or has been a little bit of a sad trend over the last few years, where a lot of companies have cut down on the amounts of testers they have,
Right.
which I hope a lot of companies also now see, the folly of their ways, and see that doesn't really work so well for them. But what I would say, and I think it is in the same vein of what I have said before, I think we need to realize that somebody who is just doing one thing in a team, the kind of super specialization, is probably not the best way to go forward. It is not a very future-proof way. I think people need to realize that these days cross-functional really is we expect developers to write tests, so we need to expect testers to do something else as well, right? So again, broaden your skill set a little bit. And then the other obvious big elephant in the room is generative AI, clearly here to stay, right? That genie is not going to go back into its bottle, no matter how much we may wish it would. I think it is, and I think it can be a great tool. It has to be used with care. Be, like many tools, it can improve your workflow, or it can really, really do damage. So think about how you want to use it. But I do think we will need to think about how we want to use it, because, like I said, it is here.
We have to work with it.
Exactly. We will have to figure it out. And I think if you can't figure it out, you will probably put yourself into a disadvantage.
Right. Thank you so much for the wise piece of advice, and hopefully the viewers who are going to watch this are going to learn a lot. They have now a proper way to navigate their learning path, and we thank you for coming on the show, please.
Well, thank you. No, thanks for having me.
Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to never miss a video from us.